You ever notice how the wisest people never waste their energy on unnecessary arguments, endless explanations, or chasing after people who don't truly value them? They don't beg, they don't plead, and they definitely don't send long, emotional goodbye messages. Instead, they simply remove themselves, quietly stepping out of the lives of those who drain, manipulate, or hold them back. It's not cruel, it's not heartless, it's necessary. And if you've ever wondered why certain people suddenly disappeared from your life, chances are they saw something you didn't. The truth is, cutting people off doesn't have to come with fireworks, shouting matches, or dramatic exits. Wise people don't need closure or explanations. They recognize that some relationships have expiration dates, and when that time comes, they move forward, without looking back. They know that not everyone deserves a seat at their table, and holding on to the wrong people can cost them opportunities, peace of mind, and personal growth. The types of people they silently remove from their lives might surprise you. Some might be in your circle right now. Some might even be people you care about, and some might make you reflect on why certain people have disappeared from your own life. Let's start with the first type, the overpromiser who never delivers. You've probably met someone like this before, the person who always has something big in the works, constantly talking about life-changing plans, game-changing ideas, and opportunities that sound too good to be true. They promise you the world, swear they're about to make major moves, and hype up their grand visions. But when it's time to actually show up and do the work, they're nowhere to be found. Now, life happens, and sometimes things don't go as planned. But with these people, it's not an occasional slip-up. It's a pattern. They live in a cycle of making empty promises, getting people excited, and then failing to follow through. And the worst part? They never take responsibility for it. They'll always have an excuse, bad timing, unexpected obstacles, something came up. But here's the real reason they do it. Most overpromisers aren't lying to you on purpose. They're lying to themselves. They love the feeling of making big promises because it makes them feel important. It gives them a temporary high, a sense of significance, but deep down they lack the discipline, the follow-through, or the work ethic to actually bring those promises to life. And if you're not careful, their delusions can rub off on you. You'll waste time believing in a vision that only exists in their imagination. You'll invest energy, maybe even money, into something that never materializes. And before you know it, you've spent months or even years waiting for someone who was never going to deliver in the first place. I know this because I've been there. I had a friend, let's call him Mike. Mike was always talking about the next big thing. Every time we met, he had a new plan, a new investor, a new opportunity that was just about to take off. And I bought into it. I believed in him. We spent hours brainstorming, planning, hyping each other up. But every single time it came down to execution, he'd disappear. He'd forget to send an email. He'd cancel meetings last minute. He'd always say, "Next week for sure." And like a fool, I kept giving him chances. Until one day, I looked back and realized nothing had actually happened. No investor, no startup, no progress. Just months wasted on empty words. That was the day I stopped chasing ghosts. A wise person doesn't argue with an overpromiser. They don't call them out. They don't even warn them. They just stop engaging. No more checking in. No more rescheduling. No more waiting. Because at the end of the day, promises mean nothing if they're not backed by action. And if someone consistently lets you down, that's not an accident. It's a character trait. You don't need to be angry. You don't need to hold a grudge. You just need to walk away, because real ones don't need to overpromise. They just show up. Now let's talk about another type of person wise individuals cut off without hesitation. The one-up machine. You ever share something you're excited about? An achievement, an experience, a moment that made you proud, only for someone to instantly hijack the conversation and make it about them. You tell them you finally ran your first 5K, and instead of celebrating with you, they say, "Oh, that's nothing. I used to run marathons all the time." You tell them about a cool trip you took, and they roll their eyes and say, "I've been there 3 times already." You mention a promotion, and they instantly downplay it because they've had way bigger career wins. These people can't stand to let someone else have a moment. It eats at them. They have an obsession with proving they've done it bigger, better, and before you. But what they don't realize is that this behavior isn't confidence. It's insecurity in disguise. The one-up machine sees every conversation as a competition. They don't celebrate your wins because they see them as a threat. Your success makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of their own shortcomings. So instead of being happy for you, they try to outshine you. And if you keep them around, it does something dangerous. It makes you start shrinking yourself. You hesitate to share your achievements because you know they'll get dismissed or overshadowed. You start downplaying your own success just to avoid their nonsense. And before you know it, you've learned to make yourself small just to protect their fragile ego. I used to have a friend like this. Let's call him Brad. No matter what I said, he always had to one-up me. If I was learning a new skill, he claimed he was already an expert. If I went on a trip, he claimed he'd been there multiple times, even though he could never name a single landmark. If I had an accomplishment, he'd instantly shift the conversation to something better he had done. At first, I ignored it, but eventually, it became exhausting. Every interaction felt like a silent battle, a never-ending competition where I had to prove myself. So, I did what a wise person does. I stopped engaging. I stopped feeding the competition. And just like that, the friendship faded. No argument, no explanation, just peace. Because here's the thing, real friendships aren't about competing, they're about celebrating. True friends don't feel threatened by your success. They don't try to minimize your achievements. They cheer you on without hesitation. And if someone in your life can't do that, they don't deserve a front row seat to your journey. There's a reason wise people don't waste energy on these individuals. They know that the people they surround themselves with will either lift them higher or drag them down. So they choose carefully. They walk away from overpromisers, one-uppers, and anyone who doesn't bring value to their life. And they do it without drama, without explanations, and without looking back, because at the end of the day, protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. Chuang Ti Duan. There's something powerful about people who know when to walk away. They don't announce their departure, they don't argue, they don't demand explanations. They simply remove themselves from anything or anyone that drains their energy, distorts their peace, or distracts them from becoming the best version of themselves. The people they cut off aren't always enemies. Sometimes they're just people who don't belong in their space anymore. And the next type of person a wise individual silently removes: the gossip addict. At first glance, gossip might seem harmless. Just casual conversations about other people's lives, right? A little drama, a little entertainment, nothing too serious. But if you look closer, you'll see that gossip isn't just talk. It's a toxic habit that reveals more about the person speaking than the people they're speaking about. People who gossip obsessively aren't just spreading information. They're exposing themselves. They're exposing their jealousy by tearing down someone else's success. They're exposing their bitterness by celebrating another person's failures. They're exposing their insecurities by fixating on people who aren't even in the room. And most importantly, they're showing you exactly how they talk about you when you're not around. Because here's the truth. If someone gossips to you, they gossip about you. It's a simple rule, and wise people understand it immediately. That's why they don't argue with gossipers. They don't try to change them. They don't warn them to stop. They just distance themselves and leave them to their small, empty conversations. I used to have a friend who was obsessed with gossip. She knew everything about everyone, who was struggling, who was succeeding, who was secretly broke, and who had relationship drama. At first, I thought it was entertaining, but then I started noticing patterns. If I shared something personal with her, somehow other people would know about it within days. She would accidentally slip details I never told her, and worst of all, she never had anything good to say about anyone. So I decided to test her. I told her something completely fake, something harmless but interesting enough that a gossip addict wouldn't be able to resist repeating. 3 days later, someone I had never told brought it up in conversation. That was all the proof I needed. She wasn't a friend. She was an informant. So I cut her off. No dramatic confrontation, no long explanation. I just stopped feeding the conversations, and almost immediately, my life got quieter, my mind got clearer, and I realized just how much mental space gossip had been taking up. A wise person doesn't waste their breath tearing people down. They focus on their own growth, their own goals, their own journey. And that's why they don't just ignore gossipers, they remove them completely. Now let's talk about another type of person wise individuals never waste time on, the social climber. You ever meet someone who treats relationships like a business transaction? Someone who isn't interested in genuine connection, but is always calculating what they can gain from you? These are the people who scan the room, looking for someone more valuable, more successful, more useful than you. When they first meet you, they act like your best friend. They overhype you, flood you with compliments, and pretend to be genuinely interested in you. But the moment someone with more status walks in, suddenly you don't exist. They don't return your messages. They don't acknowledge your presence. They only circle back when they need something from you. At first you might think, maybe they're just busy. But over time, you start to see the pattern. They love bomb new people, hyping them up and making them feel special, until they move on to someone with more influence. They only show up when they need a favor. They never offer support unless it benefits them in some way. And the worst part, they have no real loyalty to anyone. The same way they're using you, they're using everyone else. A wise person sees through this act immediately. They don't chase after social climbers. They don't try to prove their value. They don't beg for attention or wonder why they're being ignored. They just step back and let them play their game elsewhere. I once had a friend like this. Let's call him Jake. Jake was always in the right places, talking to the right people, making sure he was seen. And at first I respected it. I thought, wow, he's really good at networking. But then I realized something. He only reached out when he needed something. When I introduced him to someone valuable, he stopped responding. When I wasn't useful anymore, I became invisible to him. So I decided to test it. I stopped offering value. I stopped making introductions. I stopped being the person he could use for connections. And within weeks, he disappeared. No check-ins, no conversations, nothing. And that's when I knew. Some people don't want friendships. They want contacts. And as soon as you stop being useful, you become irrelevant. A wise person doesn't waste time chasing after these kinds of people. They watch patterns, not words. They stop feeding the illusion. And most importantly, they build real relationships, not transactional ones. Because here's the truth. The higher you climb in life, the more you realize that success without real relationships is empty. People notice who is genuine. People notice who is fake. And the people who treat relationships like stepping stones, they eventually run out of places to step. And that brings us to another kind of person-wise, individuals cut off without hesitation. The free advice, free work leech. You ever have that one friend who only calls when they need something? They don't check in. They don't ask how you're doing. They don't bring value to your life. They just pop up with, "Hey, quick question," or "I need a small favor," and you already know it's never quick and it's never small. These are the people who think your time, your energy, and your expertise are a free buffet. They want your skills, they want your connections, they want your knowledge, but they never offer anything in return. And here's the truth: wise people don't entertain these types. They see the pattern and cut the supply off, because if you let these people keep taking, they will. They won't stop until you're drained, frustrated, and questioning why you ever helped in the first place. I used to know someone like this. Let's call him Mark. Every few months, Mark would randomly hit me up, pretending like he wanted to catch up. But within 10 minutes, the conversation would always shift to, "Hey man, I just need some quick advice on this business idea." And like an idiot, I kept helping. I'd take time out of my day to give detailed feedback, review things for him, offer guidance. And what did I get in return? Nothing. No follow-up, no gratitude, no effort to apply the advice. Just another request a few months later. So I decided to test him. I asked him for a favor, something simple, just to see how he'd respond. And guess what? He gave me the most bare minimum answer possible. And then, a week later, he hit me up for another favor. That's when it clicked. He didn't value my time. He valued what he could get from me. So I stopped responding. And just like that, he disappeared. No more check-ins, no more conversations, just gone. Because the moment I stopped being useful, I was no longer part of his equation. A wise person doesn't let themselves become a free consultant. They set boundaries, they charge for their expertise, they protect their time, and they don't waste energy on people who only see them as a resource. Because here's the truth: people only take advantage of you if you let them. And the more you keep giving without expecting anything back, the more they will see you as someone to be used, not valued. And that's why wise people don't just cut these individuals off. They do it quietly, without explanation, and without second chances. Because at the end of the day, protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's survival. Chuang Ti Ding Duan. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking they have to explain themselves when they walk away. Wise individuals know better. They don't argue, they don't justify, and they don't waste time trying to make people understand why they're done. They simply disappear from the lives of those who drain, deceive, or disrespect them. And one of the most dangerous people they silently remove: the energy thief. You ever notice how some people leave you feeling exhausted every time you interact with them? It's not what they say, it's how they say it. It's the way they drain the room, how their negativity lingers in your mind long after the conversation ends. These are the people who never have anything good to say. They complain about everything, but never do anything to change their situation. They unload their problems onto you like you're their personal therapist, but when you need support, they're nowhere to be found. At first you might feel bad for them. Maybe they're going through a tough time. Maybe they just need someone to listen. But over time, you start to realize this is not a phase. This is who they are. They don't want solutions. They don't want growth. They just want to drain your energy because misery loves company. Wise people don't allow themselves to be an emotional dumping ground. They don't play the role of savior to people who refuse to help themselves. They recognize that their peace is more valuable than someone else's endless cycle of negativity, and they walk away without guilt. I used to know someone like this. Let's call her Lisa. Lisa always had something going wrong. Every time we talked, it was another crisis, another disaster, another reason why life was so unfair to her. And I tried to help. I gave her advice, solutions, encouragement. But nothing ever changed. She didn't want to fix anything, she just wanted to complain. One day I realized that after every conversation with Lisa, I felt worse, drained, heavy, like she had dumped all her problems on me and walked away feeling lighter while I carried the weight. That's when it clicked. Lisa wasn't looking for support. She was looking for someone to absorb her negativity. So I stopped answering. I stopped engaging. I stopped giving her a platform to unload on me. And just like that, she moved on to someone else. Because that's what energy thieves do. When they can't drain you anymore, they find another source. A wise person doesn't waste time trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed. They silently remove themselves and focus on those who bring value, not just problems. Another type of person wise individuals cut off without hesitation. The secret competitor. These are the people who act like they're on your team, but deep down they see you as a threat. They watch your every move, not to support you, but to measure themselves against you. When you succeed, they downplay it. When you struggle, they secretly enjoy it. They'll never openly admit it, but their energy exposes them every time. You share good news? They react with forced enthusiasm or immediately shift the conversation to themselves. You tell them about a challenge? They seem weirdly at peace, like they're relieved you're not ahead of them. They don't clap when you win. They don't help when you struggle. They just watch, waiting, calculating, making sure you never get too far ahead. A wise person spots this energy quickly and walks away, not out of anger, not out of pettiness, but because they know real friendships are built on mutual support, not silent rivalry. I once had a friend, let's call him Kevin. On the surface, Kevin was supportive. He asked about my goals, showed interest in what I was doing, even gave advice. But something always felt off. Whenever I achieved something big, his congratulations felt empty. When I faced setbacks, he didn't offer support. He offered passive-aggressive advice like, "Well, maybe this will teach you a lesson," or, "I guess you weren't ready for that success yet." At first I thought I was imagining things, but then I noticed a pattern. Whenever I shared my progress, he would subtly remind me of my failures. Whenever I talked about my future plans, he would suddenly bring up his own, making sure I knew he was still ahead. So I stopped sharing. I stopped updating him on my wins. I stopped feeding him information about my journey. And guess what? He lost interest. Because without something to compete against, he had nothing to hold on to. That's when I knew. He was never a friend. He was just keeping score. A wise person doesn't keep people around who secretly want to see them fail. They remove them and surround themselves with people who truly celebrate their wins. And then there's the victim manipulator. These are the people who always play the victim, no matter what happens. They twist every situation to make themselves the innocent one, even when they're in the wrong. If they hurt you, it's somehow your fault. If they break a promise, it's because they were going through something. If they betray your trust, they make you feel guilty for even bringing it up. The worst part? They're experts at making you question yourself. You start wondering, maybe I was too harsh, maybe I should have been more understanding. But the truth is, they're not looking for understanding. They're looking for control. Wise people don't waste time arguing with victim manipulators. They don't try to make them see the truth. They don't beg them to take responsibility. They just leave. I had someone in my life like this. Let's call her Emily. Every time she messed up, she had an excuse. If she flaked on plans, it wasn't her fault. Something urgent came up. If she lied, she had a good reason. If she was called out on her behavior, she would immediately turn the conversation around, making herself the victim. And for the longest time, I fell for it. I kept giving her chances, kept trying to be understanding. But one day, I realized Emily never changed. She never apologized, never took accountability, never made an effort to do better. So I walked away. No explanation, no argument, just silence. And just like that, she moved on to the next person who would fall for her games. That's the thing about manipulators. They don't chase after the people who leave. They just find new people to manipulate. A wise person knows that some people will never change. They don't waste time trying to fix them. They simply remove themselves and focus on those who take responsibility for their actions. At the end of the day, walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's choosing peace over chaos, growth over stagnation, self-respect over tolerance for toxic behavior. If you find yourself constantly justifying someone's actions, constantly making excuses for their behavior, constantly feeling drained by their presence, pay attention. That's not a coincidence. That's your mind and body telling you it's time to walk away. Because the truth is, the people who truly belong in your life will never make you question your worth. They will never make you feel small. They will never force you to choose between their happiness and your own peace. Wise people understand this. That's why they don't waste energy on people who refuse to grow. They don't argue. They don't fight. They don't explain. They just leave. And that decision, it changes everything. A wise person understands that silence is sometimes the loudest response. When they cut someone off, they don't announce it. They don't explain themselves, and they don't engage in long-winded conversations about why they're done. They simply remove themselves from the situation and let their absence speak for itself. Because at the end of the day, they know one undeniable truth. Not everyone deserves access to them. One of the final types of people wise individuals walk away from without a second thought is the emotional manipulator. These are the people who twist reality to suit their needs, who make you feel guilty for things that aren't your fault, and who drain your energy with their constant emotional games. They are masters of guilt trips, silent treatment, and passive-aggressive behavior, always making you feel like you're walking on eggshells around them. Wise people don't waste time trying to decode manipulative behavior. They don't engage in arguments designed to make them feel bad for setting boundaries. They recognize that true relationships don't require constant emotional gymnastics just to keep the peace, so they walk away. And then there's the person who refuses to grow, the one who complains about their life but never makes an effort to change, the one who always has an excuse, a reason why things are the way they are, but never takes accountability for their own actions. Wise people don't stick around waiting for someone to change when that person has made it clear they never will. They know that growth is a personal choice, and they refuse to let someone else's stagnation slow them down. It's not about thinking they're better than anyone else. It's about understanding that surrounding themselves with people who refuse to evolve will only hold them back. They believe in elevating their lives, their mindset, and their future, and they know they can't do that while being surrounded by people who are stuck in cycles of their own making. The most important realization a wise person has: not every battle is worth fighting, not every person is worth convincing, and not every connection is worth saving. They understand that sometimes the healthiest thing they can do for themselves is to walk away, not with hatred, not with bitterness, but with the understanding that their peace, their energy, and their growth matter more than keeping the wrong people around. Because at the end of the day, the people they cut off don't even realize what they've lost until it's too late.